Started.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Registered Nursing Board meeting. It is November 15th, 2022. We will take roll call to establish a quorum. My name is Dolores Trujillo. I am the current president of the Board of Registered Nursing. I was appointed by Governor Newsom into the direct provider role. Vice President Mary Fagan.
Good morning, I'm Mary Fagan. I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the Nursing Services Administration role.
Thank you. Elizabeth Woods.
Good morning. My name's Elizabeth Woods, and I've been here a while because I was appointed by Governor Brown.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Jovita Dominguez.
Morning, my name is Jovita Dominguez, and I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the education role.
Thank you, Jovita. Patricia Nguyen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tricia Nguyen. I was appointed by Governor Newsom in the public member role.
Thank you, Tricia. David Lawler.
Good morning, David Lawler, appointed by Governor Newsom in a public member role.
Thank you. And Vicki Granowitz.
Vicki Granowitz, public member appointed by President Pro Tempore Tony Atkins.
Thank you. And our executive officer, Loretta Melby.
I'm Gloria Loretta Melby, and I was appointed by the board.
Thank you. And our board counsel, Reza Pejuhesh. I'm learning.
You're getting better. Good morning, everybody. Reza Pejuhesh with DCA Legal Affairs Division. I am the BRN Legal Counsel.
Thank you, Reza. BRN moderator, we will now open for items not on the agenda before we go into 8.3.
Reza, do we have to do a new one since this is just a continuation of the meeting we didn't adjourn?
We had public comment for items not on the agenda yesterday. I think that satisfies the requirement. I think if there's members of the public who missed that opportunity and really want to make public comment for items not on the agenda, they can, maybe chime in on another public comment period.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Reza. We'll move into item 8.3, defer action from the October ELC meeting, discussion and possible action regarding acceptance of substantive changes to an approved program, enrollment increase for Concordia University Irvine. Baccalaureate degree nursing program, enrollment pattern, 64 students, 3 times per year.
Yeah, and so I'll explain what that was, and Mary Ann McCarthy will jump in as well.
All right.
The ELC deferred making any action on this item, which is why it was pulled out and brought to the board. We're not asking the board to defer action. We're asking the board to hear this and then make an appropriate decision. And so we'll turn it over to Mary Ann McCarthy. What that deferred action is just letting you know that the Education Licensing Committee meeting did not make any decision on this and is allowing it to be presented at the board today.
Thank you, Lori. Mary Ann McCarthy, Supervising Nursing Education Consultant and Liaison to the Education Licensing Committee. So Concordia Nursing Program is requesting a substantive change and enrollment increase in their 3rd cohort of 64 students 3 times a year at their main campus. The program currently has 2 cohorts of 64 students annually, and a 3rd cohort was approved by the board in the fall for a 3rd cohort to start, and they were approved for 24 students annually. So what Concordia is asking for is to, their original was to request 3, they already have 2, to request 1 more of 64. The board last fall approved 24, and now they're coming back to ask for a full cohort of 64 3 times a year. I'm their NEC, and the program representatives are available. Board moderator, if you could please move Cheryl up so that she can speak if needed.
And then for members that were not present or on for the Education Licensing Committee meeting, we did add information onto our materials. You will see under 8.0, board approved enrollment increases from 2019 to 2022. That is a running tally of all of the board enrollment increases, new campus locations, and new nursing program approvals since 2019 present. It does have the degree option. It also has the locations, and so you can see if there have been any increases in that particular area. The other item that was brought up for discussion at the Education Licensing Committee meeting is the report that is put out by UCSD on an every 2-year basis. And that report is called the Forecast of Registered Nursing Workforce in California 2022. You could find that by getting that on.
Lori, I'm sorry, did you want to say UCSF?
That's what I meant. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
No problem.
UCSF.
No problem.
The coffee's still kicking in. It's still early.
Absolutely. I just didn't want anybody to be confused by USD.
USD, wait, why are they doing that? Because I was wrong. They're not. UCSF is. Thank you. And so you could find that under the biannual RN survey and forecasting report on our website. And that talks about where California looks with the regional areas of need for nursing and where we have a surplus of nursing. And it really talks about what is going to be needed for the nursing pipeline to be secured. And we should have adequate number of nurses by 2037, I believe, or 39, it says on there. And then we will have a surplus of nursing following that. And so those are things that really just draw attention to the board members when they're making a decision here on enrollment increases. And we'll open it up to the school now that you guys have that added information.
Actually, do you have questions or would you like to hear from the school, Dolores?
I'd like to hear from the school.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl, are you available?
I am available. Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So hello all. I'm Dr. Cheryl Smythe-Padgham, and I am the Director of Nursing at Concordia's nursing program. And as Marianne said, we presented at the board meeting last year for our third cohort of 64, and we're approved for 24. So just a little update. The 24 have matriculated through the program. Next in spring, they will be in their final semester. And our program is uniquely made as accelerated so that we can get these students graduated, and it's a great pipeline to our hospital partners to help combat the nursing shortage right now. We have student population-wise, we're very diverse. We have over 50% identifying as minority of our nursing students. We, again, are uniquely positioned to help the pipeline of workforce as we see that there are many vacancies currently in a lot of our healthcare partners. During this year, since we were approved with the 24, we did obtain about 10 new affiliation agreements with not only acute care, but also in the community. And for instance, school districts, we have now 2 school districts, which we have students going to. So we have been able to place all students and have adequate space for the 40 more students is what we're asking for. Just a side note too, we did, I did send to the EO 4 letters from some of our CNO hospital partners, letters of support. There are stakeholders, and they wrote in support of this growth. Two of the CNOs put down some data, which basically said they have anywhere from a 15 to 30% vacancy rate currently, and anywhere from 200 to 400 vacancies currently advertised. So there is a huge need. And again, we are positioned uniquely to move students through quickly, get their bachelor's, get their NCLEX boards done, and get on the floors helping with this shortage in our local partners.
And those letters were posted. They are in the board meeting materials. As soon as we received them, we did put them onto our website, and it does say letters of support for those if you wanted to review them. In that area that they're asking for an enrollment increase, UCI School of Nursing is there, Pacific College School of Nursing is there, Concordia, of course, is there. CNI is in that location as well. West Coast University, Stanbridge, American Career College. There is quite a lot of nursing programs currently in that area. And that's where we always ask the board to take into consideration of the impact of what additional schools might do to the enrollment, in schools that are there, to the schools that are already established in those locations. We do know that that is also a location that a school closed, I believe last year, or 2 years ago now, Western Governors University closed because of lack of clinical placements. And so they no longer are operating in California based on that. And additionally, there have been schools in that area who have had to take a pause or take decreased number of students in because of their inability to secure adequate clinical placements. One of the at-risk things that National Council of State Boards will look at for schools are whether or not the clinical placements are robust and are able to support. So those are all things that we're asking you to take into consideration. And one of the main reasons why the Education Licensing Committee meeting, there was not a decision made, and they wanted to have a discussion here with our board members. Thank you.
So as I understand it now, this third cohort has 24 students that have just completed going through the program?
Correct.
What I heard? Oh, okay. I'm just curious, do you have anything like a waiting list for people wanting to get into this program and the cost of the program?
Certainly. The cost of the program is $55,000 for the full bachelor's degree. Again, it's a 15-month program. It's accelerated, so they are able to complete in 15 months. I'm sorry, what was your other question?
I was just curious to know if you had a waiting list.
Oh, thank you. We don't have a waiting list, although when we get applications, we turn away a very large number that we cannot take. So they are qualified, but we cannot take them because we don't have enough seats to take them. So we have no waiting list, but our application process is robust applications that come in.
So that tuition is for 2 years, 3 years, 15 months. So a little over 2 years, or about 2 years. And that's $55,000.
Yeah, so it's equivalent to a 2 year. So in our business profession codes, it says that nursing programs have to be at least 2 years in length or an equivalent to 2 years. So the program must be equivalent to 2 years. Do you guys do intersession? Do you guys offer winter and summer? Is that how it's able to be condensed?
That's correct.
But it's still the same amount of semesters. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the same amount of units. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
on your applicants, do you guys participate in nursing CAS or nursing CAS?
We do not currently.
You do not. Okay. For the board members that aren't familiar with what nursing CAS is, and this is kind of problematic when we're trying to track interest in our nursing programs, is nursing CAS is a centralized application. And what students do, potential students, is they go to this website, they fill out one application, and that one application is sent out to 275 schools that partner with Nursing CAS. And so when we look at our data that talk about each school's received this many applicants and they've had to turn this many people away, that's not an accurate number. And in the UCSF report, they make mention of that because it is not individual people, it is individual applicants. And that hasn't been developed to be a good way of tracking that yet. So with one application, one potential nursing student can blanket 275 schools with the click of a button. And this is only one of those services. I'm sure that there are more out there, but I'm familiar with the Nursing CAS. From when I was in NEC, I was doing a continuing approval visit at Mount St. Mary's University, and you reach out to the students and you say, hey, why did you choose this school? And one of the students said, I didn't even know that this school existed, but they were the one that accepted my application. And I was like, wait, how does that work? And they said, oh, I used the application called Nursing CAS. And so nursing schools are difficult to get into. So I did this. They called me and I came and relocated to go to that school. And so that's something to take into consideration when we're looking at the applicant pool, is these are applications, not individual people. One person can apply to 275 schools with one click of the button. So just more information for you guys to have. It's called Nursing CAS. If you guys are interested in looking at it, it's www.nursingcas.org. Thank you.
That's very similar to the Common App for my seniors just applying to college,
Yes.
Which makes me wonder at Concordia, I have a number of questions, but you said with an increase of 40 more students, are we talking 40 students in a obviously a cohort that already exists with 24 other students? So is this, but your capacity doesn't need to grow because you're already doing 64 students in separate cohorts? Is that correct? You don't need another facility for this group, right?
That's correct. Exactly.
And the couple different times I've heard you say an accelerated program or try to move them through because of the staffing shortage. Is that an adjustment to your program that shortens it? That's recent? Is that a new adjustment? Because the staffing shortage isn't new. There's always a staffing shortage. You ask any nurse anytime, yes, we need more staffing. But I'm just curious because for the cost, which isn't unreasonable, that's, private school, that's fine. But I'm curious, is the program impacted in a way like with clinical hours or with what that makes it sounds to me, to put it in very frank, real terms, more like an assembly line to get them out because we have a shortage, as if we're at the height of COVID right now and we need nurses in the field.
So thank you for that question. So we have always been an accelerated program. We are a second bachelor's degree, basically, second bachelor's degree accelerated program. So that's how we came into existence, actually, in 2008. So we've been around quite a while. We produce very good nurses. And I think the reason why I said the impact of getting them out there is because of our CNO partners that are telling us that their vacancy rates are so high right now. And so that's the reason why I mentioned that, because in one, they said up to like 30% vacancy. I mean, that's crazy. We haven't seen that in a very long time. So that's the reason for that comment. I just wanted to say too about the applications. I just filled out the BRN survey, and so I know this off the top of my head, but we had about 480 or so applications, and once they were screened, qualified was about 300 and something, 80 something. So then we are blessed to be able to pick the cream of the crop from those to sit in our seats. So just so you know, application numbers.
Can I just follow up real quick? part of your program, I think I read in one of our forums in our materials, uses simulation for clinical work. I'm a public member, so this is a foreign world to me. Can you talk about how that works and how that prepares the nurse differently than, or the similarly to real clinical?
Sure, thank you for that opportunity. Simulation, we utilize, well, the regulation for the BRN, we can utilize up to 25% of our clinical hours as simulation. We only use, honestly, about 7 to 10% because we have been so lucky to have clinical placements out in our community, in our acute care settings, as well as our community settings. Simulation we use, it's a terrific way for students to be able to be put in situations that they may not see during their clinical hours. And this is something that has been developed. We have a simulation coordinator who is certified in simulation. So students are being able to, I'll give you a for instance, we have an end of life scenario right now that the senior students have the opportunity to join in. And so they're able to work through a lot of the communication and what to say to the family, and all of that is within that end of life. They may not get that opportunity to be able to be there for the family at end of life in their clinical hours. I know I didn't, and I was at a 4-year program. So being able to have that simulation and put those students in situations where they can work through and then debrief after, that's huge, to debrief after and to let students talk through it, to let our instructors, our experts talk through what went well, what needed to be improved, that sort of thing. So simulation has been a great tool, but again, we don't use too much of it yet. We could expand, but we've just been lucky to have clinical placements out in the community.
Thank you for that. And my very last question, I promise. I understand the $55,000 price tag is full retail, but wouldn't you say most of your students have FAFSA, Cal Grants, other forms of financial aid where they're not paying full retail?
The numbers, I don't know off the top of my head. There are certainly students that do have help with paying for college. Because these are second degree students, some of them do not qualify. They've already used up their monies for FAFSA. But there are some that do have some kind of loans, things like that, but I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head.
Thank you for your information. I appreciate it.
Of course.
This is Betty. I have a question. Perhaps you could clarify something for me. I thought you had said that you have no waiting lists for the school. What about the people who were not able to get in? What happens to them? They have to completely reapply for your program, or how does that work?
We have a process for those that don't get in that they can reapply. They don't have to, of course, fill all the paperwork out again or do the whole process again. But we have not had to have waiting lists because we have such a large pool of expert applicants to choose from. So if they don't get in, they certainly can say, okay, I want to try to get into the next cohort. And so we do have a system and a process in place for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. Yes. First of all, thanks for being here. So I sit on the Educational Licensing Committee, so this is my second go round. So you're talking about increasing the enrollment by 120 students a year, right? So it's an additional 40 for each cohort, and there are 3 cohorts?
No, it's 40 students only. So we currently have 2 cohorts that do have the 64. And then we were approved last year for a 3rd cohort, but only at 24 students.
Okay.
So we're actually asking just to increase to the 64 in that cohort.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Sure.
My concern is lessened, but I still do wonder about the placements, and I'm very pleased to hear that you're not having problems with placements, but I do wonder about just the context of, where you're located and if you will be kind of stepping on other programs that are working hard to get their clinical placements. And I'd put that question to you, and I'd also ask Mary Ann to chime in when you're finished. And thank you very much for being here.
Of course, thank you. We are a part of a consortium for both Los Angeles and for Orange County, and those consortiums work really well at allowing hospitals to say this is what we have available and allowing the academic side to put in their requests. So this is a system that is extremely robust in LA. Orange County's coming up there, it's getting better, but this is a great tool for all of us in the community, to all of us meaning all academia and all hospital side, to not step on each other's toes. So for instance, if we were to put in an app into the consortium, we would like to have in spring, we'd like to have a 16-week course on Wednesdays at this hospital, and we can look and see, is that already taken? If it's already taken by another school, or the request is turned around and sent back to us by the hospital saying, nope, we already have someone there, that's fine, we move on. So it's been a great system in that way to allow us to not step on toes, to be able to work within the community. And we've gotten really smart about going out into the community too. I'm a nurse practitioner by trade, and I love the community. I love public health. I want our RNs to understand the community as well. So we have expanded some opportunities for our students. We also try to take what's available. So that's night shifts, that's weekend shifts if we need to, so that we're not stepping on others. And we all work together. We've collaborated for years with the other programs to have enough space for all the students.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that. Is the consortium, does it include all the nursing schools in the area, or is it just some of them?
It's whoever is a member of. So it does not include all of them, although we do have quite, I don't know who's on the roster, that we do have quite a robust amount of schools as well as hospital partners, but it's not all of them on either way. I think San Diego has the best, that really most everyone is in it. But unfortunately, we're not quite there yet with either the LA or the Orange County. There are some outside of that consortium. And then you work with them through their education department.
But there is still the possibility that you are actually taking potential clinical seats that other nursing schools could use.
We talk with our hospital partners or our community partners, and they let us know what's available for our students. They let us know what shifts are available. So we use their guidance in that.
I'm still, Lori, I'm still confused about how we know if there actually is availability if we approve the 40 more students, because it just isn't clear. If the consortium included everybody, maybe that would make sense to me, but it sounds a little Wild West at this point to me. So I have a little concern about adding more students if we don't really know, and we've already had one school closed. Are there other schools that are teetering on the edge because they can't get clinical placements?
There are. We receive comments from schools on a regular basis about difficulty finding clinical placements. It is unfortunate that we don't have a better tracking system in place. One of the California State Audit recommendations were for the Board of Registered Nursing to get a better tracking system in place. It has been built, it is in testing, and it's out with the deans and directors now, but it hasn't been finalized yet. The board gets information on clinical sites that are affiliated with the academic institutions only. We don't get information outside of that. So if there is a hospital that doesn't partner with the school, we won't have that information that's outside of our jurisdiction. So most places rely on these consortiums. The problem with the consortiums in California is they're not interrelated and they're not mandated to be participated in by all of the schools or even the healthcare facilities. Excuse me. So like she said, is San Diego has one of the more robust ones. And the way that San Diego County utilizes it is they have a requirement that the healthcare facilities signed in for, where the healthcare facilities came together and said, we're not going to take any clinical placements unless they go through the consortium. That is not what happens in other areas. Anytime you have a healthcare facility accepting students outside of the consortium, academic providers are not enticed then to join and participate in the consortium because they can make those deals outside of a consortium. And it's not always public. It's not always known who is on what unit at what time and how many. And that is one that the San Diego Consortium really has. They have a public calendar in all the healthcare facilities in San Diego County. You can access that and you'll know which school is where and how many students and on what days. And it's really a robust system. That is not something that the rest of California has, unfortunately. What we do have is just the beginning phases of trying to get some data collection. I can pull the data from 2019 that there were 2 schools that said, hey, we want to start up in LA and we think that we have the ability to do it. And that was West Coast Ultrasound and Angeles College. And both of those schools in 2019 gave their bid to us and the board accepted that. Angeles School started in 2020. They're a BSN program. They enroll 60 students annually. So their capacity would be 120 students, or sorry, would be, if it's a 3-year program, it would be 180 students. And typically these are accelerated programs with the private colleges and universities. So they're going to have 180 students in the LA area added in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. They're still growing, right? Because they just have a brand new school. So they're probably at about 2 years in, and they probably have about 120 students. Those students should probably start hitting the hospital side in a year when they graduate. And so they will be 60 students coming out from LA every year added in that was approved by the board in 2020 that should hit the hospitals in a year. So there'll be 60 more students coming out from Angeles. Unitech, excuse me, American Career College in LA got a career enrollment increase where they added an additional 84 students annually, going from 66 students to 150 students. That was approved in 2022. It's an ADN program, so we're looking at 2 years. So those 150 students, the increase of 84 should hit the hospitals this year, 2 years after they received that increase. So there should be an additional 84 students coming into the LA area, into the hospitals to assist. Then you look at 2021, last year. In LA, Charles Drew increased 80 students annually to a BSN program. And they should hit next year. Those first 80 should start to come out and be absorbed in the LA area and staff hospitals in that area. Charles Drew also has an entry-level master's program, and they increased by 20 students. They were previously at 60, and now they have 80, and we should start seeing them next year as well. Then you have another the West Coast Ultrasound, which is the new program that they said in 19, hey, we want to start. They were actually able to start, and they were approved for 90 students annually. It's an ADN program. Next year, those 90 students should start to graduate, and those should come out and start hitting the hospitals in LA. Stanbridge University, which is in Irvine, they increased that same year 50 additional students. It's a BSN program. We'll start seeing them, those additional 50 students next year in 2023 come out and help the hospitals out. Mount St. Mary's, they stopped one of their programs, their associate degree program. They stopped offering it, and they absorb those students into their BSN program. So not a increase, but just kind of a realignment from an ADN to a BSN. Stanbridge in Orange County, which is still just that same geographic area, they had an enrollment increase of 70 students. They went from a BSN program having 90 students annually to now having 160 students annually. And those students, again, those 70 more students should start hitting hospitals next year to help out. And then in another Concordia, this college here that they were talking about, they did increase 24 students. So they were previously offered 128 students as part of their BSN program in 2021. And as you heard, that has wrapped up and they're out there helping in the hospitals. And they were increased by 24. So they have 192 currently with them. And so those are the areas right around. And if you look at what the board has done this year, they did an enrollment increase in May for American Career College again. It is only for 2 years, but Angeles, that new program that started, we did an enrollment increase by another 60 students. And so that will then continue to hit. So this is something that our board hasn't tracked before. They just kind of approved enrollments and didn't really make a plan. But what happened is in the legislative session last year, so 2 years ago now, sorry, AB 1015, I believe was the bill was passed. It was introduced by Rubio and passed in a response to the California State Auditors, which created our Business and Profession Code 2717. And 2717 of our Business and Professions Code gave the onus to the board to do a workforce plan. And it says the board shall incorporate regional forecast into its biannual analysis of nursing workforce conducted pursuant to Section 502. It also says the board shall develop a plan to address regional shortages identified by its nursing workforce forecast. And that was the report that I referenced at the beginning of this meeting. And the board shall plan to identify additional facilities that could offer clinical placements. The board shall annually collect, analyze, and report information related to the number of clinical placement slots that are available and the location of those clinical placement slots within the state, including but not limited to information concerning the total number of placement slots a clinical facility can accommodate and how many slots the program that use the facility will need. The board shall place the annual report on its internet website. So we're working towards implementing all of that. That became effective at January this year. That IT is in the process of being built. We updated our regulations to be able to collect this information. And the first forecast was just delivered for you guys to take into consideration. And so this is where we have to, as a board, address the regional areas of shortages. And right now, LA, Irvine area is not necessarily showing a regional shortage. They are showing a need for nurses, but we as the board have addressed that by approving enrollment increases, improving a new program, approving just growth. And there's already other schools in that area that are serving that. So we do hear from the hospitals that they have a need. It's the greatest need the hospitals have experienced in a long time. They have been forced with the exodus of staff to rely on very expensive traveling nursing contracts that have not been really conducive to hospitals and even the nurses that are working with the traveling nurses. There's been, just kind of strife back and forth because they make a much higher wage typically than the nurses that are employees of that hospital. And there's some strife that goes back and forth with that. And there's even a strike that is threatening, I believe, in Northern California right now over, conditions and pay and such. So there is something that the board needs to do to be able to address some of these. It's Kaiser Permanente in Northern California that's striking. And so there is a need. We absolutely hear that there's a need, and but we just don't have a very good way of tracking it, and that is on the onus for the board, where we do have to create a plan, and it does need to focus on regional. That workforce report does need to be taken into consideration. The one thing to consider, which I think is unique for this school, is their other semesters are already enrolling 64. There's one semester that enrolls 24. That is problematic for a school when you're looking at it from a business standpoint, because for that semester, when you take in a lesser amount of students, you have faculty that are employed that are reliant upon scheduling and getting paid, and they do not have an adequate number of students to support that. You also have what is commonly referred to in the nursing academia is squatters' rights. And so you have these contracts or MOUs with these healthcare facilities where they expect your students to rotate through on a regular basis. And you may have slots for 64 on 2 of your semesters, and then your final trimester, you're only doing 24. Although I'm sure that the nursing staff at the healthcare facilities are excited to get a break, a lot of times that clinical placement will be released to another school in that area. And because those 40 slots are not being taken, because it is so impacted. So from a business standpoint, it would be very easy for Concordia University to take on the additional students to be able to have consistent number of students, 64 for each enrollment cycle. That could be supported in the community very easily. And that would do well for Concordia's business model. It would do well for the faculty, and it would do well for the clinical areas to have that consistency. One thing to consider is when that school was not utilizing those 40 additional placements, when they had 24 instead of 64, were there schools that were utilizing that? Typically, we rely on public comment. Typically, we rely on other programs to come in and bring that up. We do have some nursing program directors in our attendees. It may be a benefit to open it up to public comment and see if there are nursing program directors that have concern about this growth. I have not received an email recently, but in the area that was being discussed, there was another school in that area that had reached out to people letting know that they wanted an enrollment increase. And we definitely heard at that point that there was big concern for any growth in that area, and that that would have a greater effect. But I think at that one, it was the amount of enrollments that school was considering. So I think with this enrolling 40 to have an equal number of 64 would have a lesser impact. But we don't have a really good, robust tracking for that at all, Vicki, and I'm sorry. We will get there.
That was a lot of information.
Yes.
Thank you. So we don't really know if the area is impacted, but we do know that there are issues if we don't approve this that could be problematic for Concordia. I think I've heard enough information. I don't know if the rest of the board still has questions, but I think I'm ready to make a decision.
I have a couple questions. Go ahead, Reza.
Thanks, Dolores. This is just a quick comment, somewhat of an aside. I wanted to take the opportunity, since I heard some talk about workforce and Business Professions Code 2717. This is technically not necessarily directly impacting this decision, but something to kind of, I just wanted to mention it since we were having that discussion, and something to kind of get used to going forwards. Our Sunset Bill AB 2684 added in, it will add in a provision, I should say, that once the law takes effect in a few weeks here, it has not yet technically amended the law, but the bill is passed and it will go into effect in 2023. What it added was Business Professions Code Section 2786.2, subdivision B1F. Again, that's Business Professions Code 2786.2, subdivision B1F, which is a new provision that says when considering a request to increase enrollment, the board may consider only the following factors related to the ability to adequately train additional students. And the factors that it lists are adequacy of resources, and I'm going to paraphrase to make it quick, availability of clinical placements, complaints against the school, licensing, examination, pass rates, graduation rates, and retention rates. And then the one I wanted to just highlight, it says any other similar factors specified by the board and regulations, but the board shall not consider nursing workforce issues, including those identified under section 2717 as factors for purposes of this subparagraph. So although section 2717 does direct the board to incorporate regional forecasts of the nursing workforce and develop a plan to address shortages relating to workforce issues, going forwards, once 2684 takes effect, workforce issues are not really to be brought into the consideration of enrollment increases. So again, that law is still waiting to actually take effect. So today, as it sits, it's not really technically impacting you. But I just because we were, the topic was kind of somewhat came up. I just wanted to make that reminder so that in the future you have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, that doesn't take place until January, but one of the added things there that Reza did not cover is that enrollment increase provision is only for schools that are accredited. And so it is for the approved schools of nursing that are actively accredited by an institution or programic accreditor recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. The board shall, without requiring additional documentation or action, do the following unless unrelated to the scope of accreditation. And that's where it lists 1, A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way through. And so our schools that are not accredited do not have that same requirement. Our schools that are accredited do have that same requirement. What happened in the Sunset Bill, which is what we discussed at length this last year, is that it created a 2-tier system. And it is of huge unfortunates that has happened because most of our schools that are not accredited are our associate degree programs and our community colleges. It is the primary schools that do hold accreditation are our BSN programs, and they are our private colleges and universities. And so that Reza brought up, and I'm glad that he did, is a law that's going to take into effect in January that will cause a divide within our nursing programs, that cause a 2-tiered system, the way that board will look at and evaluate everything. Additionally, under V, where it says any other similar factors specified by the board and regulations, well, we all know yesterday by talking about regulations, that process is robust and will take approximately 1 or 2 years for that to be completed so that we could have any ability to look at anything outside of that. When you're looking at-risk programs for enrollment increases, there's a vast number of options and things that need to be looked at that are supported in research that's done by NCSBN, and they put that out there. Yet we have had our hands tied to not be able to look at those until we can get a regulation passed to be able to look at those for our accredited programs. But it is absolutely something we can look at for our non-accredited programs. And so in here lies a lot of the issues that we had with our Sunset Bill, where we were really kind of pounding the pavement, talking to whoever we could, saying this is really an unfair bill. This is unfair. How is this supposed to be implemented? How are we supposed to do this equally? Because we won't be able to do this equally going forward. And so that's a whole nother larger topic that will need to be discussed when we enter into January. But thank you for bringing that up, Reza. Yes, that is something that will definitely cause a huge divide going forward.
I'd like to make just a couple of comments, if I can. One of the things, from someone who's living in the practice setting as a nurse executive, I do want to echo that we're seeing the highest vacancy rates we've ever seen. I've been in this organization for 35 years. We've never seen as much vacancy rate, and we are hiring. So, and there's new data that's coming out all the time that's talking about the percentage of nurses that are planning to leave the profession. So I appreciate the data that's come out of UCSF, and I really want us to have hard data, but what they used was data from 2021 and then preliminary data from 2022. So I'm concerned that the data that's coming out of the UCSF report really isn't a reflection of what's actually happening right now. That's one point. Another thing I know that what we are doing here at Rady Children's is we re-looking at the number of clinical placement slots we can have. So, we've realized we need to bring in more new graduates, which means we need to have more students here practicing clinically. So we're rethinking. So I don't want us to assume that just because the number of clinical placement slots that we have is what it is today, that it's going to be static. Because we are looking, and I know other organizations are, is how can we expand, how can we be more creative about how we can bring nursing students in. Thirdly, I think, and Lori, you brought this up, the fact that Concordia already has 64 students in the spring and in the fall, I'm assuming, and they only have 20 in the summer. Well, from a practicing, nurse leader, it's actually easier to have 64 the whole time as opposed to adjusting and the expectations of the nursing staff who are going to be working with them. So it's not like they're taking their 64 and taking it to 104, which that is a very different proposition than taking the 20 and making it equal to what it was previously. So I'm really very impressed that Concordia has kept an NCLEX pass rate of 96%. When we looked at all that data yesterday of NCLEX pass rates that were sinking, they maintained theirs very high, which I think is a really good sign. And the last thing, Lori, I want to talk to you and Reza maybe, is there anything we can do as the BRN to mandate that that communities have consortiums? Because it seems to me that if there is an actively, successfully working consortium, we can get out of this and just let the nursing school, the hospitals and the nursing schools figure it out on their own. So we don't have to be making assumptions when we're not sure we're using correct data.
There would have to be a law introduced that would mandate consortiums. The only thing that we have for consortiums is when we look at new programs. And so let me just pull this document up really quick. It's called the EDP I-01. And when we're looking at new programs, they utilize this form. And one of the final areas on that when we're looking at the feasibility is in the discussion, it says, clinical placements of a new program must take into consideration the impact on the use of the clinical facility by existing pre-licensure registered nursing programs and must be coordinating with any process for clinical placement, such as consortium for regional planning. Include a description of your collaboration and coordination efforts with any existing registered nursing program in any regional planning consortium. So that is for new programs and now new campus locations. And so that too will take into effect January 1 for the new campus locations. So any new program, any new campus location, we do say that they must take into consideration the impact. They must look at the existing pre-licensure programs. They must coordinate all clinical placements, and they must use things such as a regional planning consortium. They do need to include that data. That data does need to be taken into consideration and presented forward by the NECs. When you're looking at current students, current programs, academic institutions that are not looking at a new program or a new campus, their clinical placements come under 1427. And the statement that we have in 1427 that gives the board any legal authority to look at this says that in selection in selecting a new clinical agency or facility for student placement, the program shall take into consideration the impact that an additional group of students would have on students of other nursing programs already assigned to the agency or facility. So that is the extent of the legal ability that our board has on requiring schools to work collaboratively with the already developed or already in place nursing programs that are in that area. We used to, prior to the California State Auditor, require any new programs that wanted to increase their enrollment in any way to reach out to the schools in their local area and say, would this affect you? Are you in support of our growth? Are you not in support of our growth? The California State Auditors in 2019, when they came in and we got the report in 2020, said immediately stop that practice. We can no longer have them do that and provide that evidence to us. And so we've had to quit doing that. That was useful to a point because that communication was started. And that then alerted the other program directors to voice their opinion or voice their effect. What became problematic is we were not able to validate that information. It was not able to say, yes, truly this would cause an effect on that school, or no, it would not cause an effect on that school. But I really, just when we look at these going forward, we do have a lot of new board members on here, and we're really trying to gather this data to create a plan, is just to kind of to look back at what the board has done to address these areas already, how many students are going to be coming out just this year and next year to kind of address that 30% vacancy rate. We do need to take that into consideration. Not that we think that it's going to be end all be all, and it will match that, because you want that ongoing pipeline. And the other piece of information that is really imperative for us to take into consideration is that there's data out that says 30% of new grads will leave the nursing profession within 2 years. So even though the schools are stepping up and increasing their enrollment and answering this pipeline and making sure that this is done, there is data now supporting that 30% of these new grads that are graduating will be leaving the profession within 2 years, because they have a lot of different areas of reasons why that could be happening, but nothing that's been locked down. So great conversation. Thank you for the questions.
I have a couple of questions. Cheryl, are you currently using the state of emergency provisions, or are you fully back in clinicals? You had mentioned some simulation, which the BRN does not regulate simulation. So I hear you saying approximately 7% of your curriculum is simulation. So are you still using the state of emergency provisions, or are you fully back into clinicals?
We are fully back into clinicals, and we have been for quite some time. We use simulation as basically an adjunct to some of our education, again, putting students in situations that they may not see that faculty thought were important. Students had that exposure, but we do very little compared to many other programs of simulation. We are back full and do not use any of the emergency.
All right. And do you track, congratulations on your NCLEX pass rates, those are phenomenal. Do you track your students after they come out of your program, they graduate, pass their NCLEX, if they're able to find jobs? And this is probably not a question I can ask in January, but I'm very curious. Are they finding jobs here in California? Because we know that there's a shortage in California, but yet we still also know that students are going out of state because they come out with these student loans and they have to start paying them, and they've got to pay them somehow. And some of them cannot find jobs here in California. So do you hear back? Do you track the amount of students that are, one, going out of state, or two, staying within the state? and are able to find new grad positions.
Yes. So absolutely, we've been blessed to have NCLEX board scores since the beginning of our program, never below 90%. It's been as high as 99%. And we did see some drop with COVID, but not a whole lot. So we've been very successful. Students, when they graduate, we do try to track them. And many of them, I'd say a majority of them, find jobs within 3 to 6 months, although it's been very unique this last probably, 6 to 8 months where they're getting bonuses. They're being begged by different facilities to come and work for them. They're having lots of opportunity and choices. And so we have not heard any students having problems. And most of our students stay in California. Some may go home, which may be Northern California or down south into San Diego. But for the majority of our students find work here in California, which we're very proud of because we want them to stay here and work here and join our workforce.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. I would like to make a motion to accept the substantive changes to an approved program enrollment increase for the Concordia University Irvine Baccalaureate Degree Nursing Program. Enrollment pattern will be 64 students 3 times per year.
Second, Vicki Granowitz.
Okay. BRN moderator, can you open it up for public comment, please?
Sure. I'm going to give some quick rundown of how we run public comment, and then I will open it up. Good morning. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute your microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning as your time approaches. I will mute your microphone and will announce that your allotted time has expired. I will then move on to the next member of the public who has comment. Please see the directions on the screen. Other than that, we will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing in the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Mary Steckler would like to make a comment. 1 second, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mary Steckler. I'm the Associate Dean of Health Sciences, Director of Nursing at Santa Ana College. I've been on this call now for an hour, and I haven't heard anything other than one comment that Lori made recently about the community college associate degree nursing programs. I did appreciate Vicki Granowitz's comments about, or questions about impacting other programs. Concordia is in Irvine. Lori mentioned all these schools, but did not mention that Saddleback Community College and Santa Ana Community College are going to be impacted by this heavily. We can't even get our cohorts now fully placed. We can only get half the cohort at any time. So when Concordia says they're getting all their placements, I question that. And I don't question Concordia, I question the facilities. The problem here is that the facilities, yeah, they have a great need, but they're being very selective, and they are creating a divide in our nursing programs. You know, we get 600 applications. I just had them. I had over 600. I can only take 40 in the spring and 60 in the fall. I would love to take all 600 because you know why? These are the students that need it. These are the students that can't afford $55,000 for an education. And they're the ones that are going to be loyal to their communities. I'm telling you right now, we need to focus on how we can grow the community college programs as opposed to all these private schools. It just really bothers me. And I can tell you right now, as far as job rates, our job rates are really high because the students that graduate, they go back into their communities that they're in. They don't have to go out of state because they don't have the $55,000 bill at the end of the day. So please, I'm just, I know I've made this comment before, and back in 2021, the board approved Sri Sai Krish Institute in Stanton for 72 students. And do you know that they weren't even part of the consortium? The consortium right now is really problematic. I go there once a month and I look around and there's all these schools and there's like 3 or 4 facilities. So facilities aren't going to the consortium to get their students. I'm going to a leadership meeting tonight with the leaders in Orange County. And every time I go, I look around and it's just, we're getting pushed out. The ADN programs are being pushed out. And truly, I wish that you would consider this when you make your decision. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Peter Sinkbill would like to make a comment. Peter? I can't unmute Peter, and Peter can't unmute himself. On your screen, a window should have popped up that says unmute me.
My name is Peter Sinkbill. I'm Vice President and Special Assistant to the President at Concordia University, Irvine. So a cabinet administrator in charge of new program development and program expansion. Speaking in support of the motion, I just want to emphasize 3 points related to Concordia. First, the quality of our programs. You've already heard about our NCLEX pass rates in our ABSN program of 95 to 96%. Our completion rates are very high. We do an excellent job of sending nursing students out into the community here in California to be nurses. I want to talk about the diversity of our student population. We are a Hispanic serving institution. That means more than 25% of our undergraduates are Hispanic, identify as Hispanic. That's true in our nursing program as well as our traditional undergraduate population. And more than 50% of our students in the nursing program identify as students of color. So we serve a diverse population that serves the California community. And then finally, efficiency. As has been pointed out, our current enrollment pattern of 3 cohorts a year, 64, 64, 24, creates some disruptions both for us and for the hospitals and other facilities where we're placing students in clinicals. And so moving to an enrollment pattern of 3 cohorts of 64 a year would make that more regular and more efficient, both for us and for the facilities that host our clinicals. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your comment. Board President Trujillo, there are no other public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Sure, thank you. I'd like to state one comment before we go to the vote. The impact to the community colleges. This has also been a concern for the board. And we heard you loud and clear. We need to figure out a way that we can look at clinical placement and also continue to look at enrollment increases. So
Dolores, may I make a follow-up
Yeah.
comment? Thanks so much. Thanks for stating that, and thanks to Mary Steckler for bringing that up. That is, in my mind, the nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
And I would love to ask EO, Melby and staff to help us figure this out by maybe agendizing an information hearing at one of the upcoming meetings so that we can really, start to figure this out. Because if we approve enough increases in enrollments and non-community college programs, we are going to be very sorry.
Agree. Thank you. Yes, we can agendaize that. Absolutely. And again, on the data that I put forth, last year we approved 1,457 students enrollment increases, and only 56 went to community colleges. Where we stand this year, we have 654 enrollment increases to private institutions and 152 to public institutions. We have a total of 806 new enrollments approved this year, not counting the approvals that we've done at this board meeting. Understanding that yesterday's board meeting, we took the vote and the board did do the approval, and there were several enrollment increases that were approved with that vote yesterday. So we did do an enrollment increase for Porterville College Associate Degree of Nursing, additional 20, so enrollment pattern of 20 students, 2 times a year for 40 students. Yesterday, we approved an enrollment increase for College of the Sequoias Associate Degree Nursing. Pattern is 20 students starting in May. There's another enrollment increase that was approved yesterday, which was Allen Hancock College Associate Degree Nursing Program, 50 students annually starting in spring of 2023. Another enrollment increase was approved yesterday for Unitech College BSN program, Sierra View, 15 students twice a year, Kauai Health, 25 students twice a year. Concordia University did have an enrollment increase as well yesterday, the same program, but in a different location. It was in Ontario. And they had an enrollment pattern that was approved for 72 students 3 times a year, phasing in over 3 years. Fall 2023 and fall 2024, they're taking in 48 students. Summer 24, they're taking in 64. Fall of 24, they're taking in 72. And in 2025 forward, they'll do 72 students 3 times a year. And so just yesterday, we did 5 enrollment increases that the board approved. And the board approved 1 self-study for a brand new program to get started. And that is a Palo Verde College Associate Degree in Nursing programs for 20 students annually starting in spring. So our board has, again, for finishing out 2022, when this vote goes through, not denied a single enrollment increase in 2019, 2020, 21, and 2022. So for 4 years, every enrollment increase that is brought forth in front of this board, including new campus and new location and new program, has been approved by the board. So perfect. I do put that information out there. We do show private and public institutions and the difference in approval for that. And I will add to probably our next board meeting in February, some sort of a informational sharing training program on our clinical placements. It is quite vast and not an easy thing to consider. Thank you.
So it's my understanding that those clinical placements that we authorized yesterday were, many of them were in areas that were needed, including the Concordia in
Ontario.
Ontario, yeah.
Yeah, that's a regional area that has a great need. The difficult part is Orange County, Irvine, LA, and San Diego are all really impacted. And Mary Steckler, who was our public comment, she did come back when we approved a school for SSKI when that first started. She was very vocal when CNI sent out a request for enrollment increase, kind of just letting people know. She reached out and let us know and was one of the more vocal program directors. We need our program directors to speak up. We need our program directors to come in, participate in public comment, and let us know what's happening. If we do a agenda item where we talk about displacement, we'll send out an invite to our program directors and see if they can schedule it in so they can come in and really speak to what that impact is and how it is affecting them. Trying to make it in a virtual atmosphere so that we can get more and more program director participation, but that still has not kind of worked out yet. They're busy putting out fires, doing their day-to-day work, I'm sure.
So Lori, can you recall off the top of your head how the 24, the third cohort, the 24 got approved? And why it was 24 and not a full cohort? Or maybe Cheryl can.
I can't. The program director probably knows off the top of their head, and if the NEC is available, they may know as well.
Okay.
But I know that did come in front of our board, and we didn't approve the full number. I believe we did the 24, and that's how that first enrollment increase occurred.
Dolores, yes, that is what happened. They asked for 64 3 times a year, and they were only, because of this discussion about the area, and Cheryl, please jump in and correct me if I'm incorrect, they did agree that they could, take less with the understanding that they would be coming back this year and asking for the full cohort.
Yeah, I vaguely remember this, but I didn't remember all of the particulars. I think at this point, I'm going to keep my motion on the floor for various reasons. One being I know that it's difficult balancing staff, budget, all of that. But I think in the future, I believe we as a board need to do a better job at really looking at this and looking at the community that these enrollment increases are being requested and not be afraid to say no. We have studies that show and these areas are impacted. And I think we're doing the students a disservice of coming out, and students are still coming out right now with all of the shortages that are being, stated, especially in Southern California, and they're still not finding jobs. And part of that is the hospitals are not opening a lot of new grad training programs, and maybe that's what needs to happen also. And so they're worried about their student loans and they're going out of state. I keep my motion on the floor as far as accepting the substantive changes. I have a second. Is there any other comment or questions that board members may have before we go to a vote?
The only other comment I have is when I really appreciate your suggestion that we take this and agendize it in the future. But Lori, it would be great to know from your colleagues with the National Council of State Boards of Nursing. I'm sure the other state boards are dealing with this as well. If there are any best practices out there that we could emulate as we're trying to get better, because I certainly share the concern. I'm afraid, though, that as a board, if we say it sounds like the decision about whether the students are placed is not the board's decision, it's the facility's decision, right? So
it is, yes.
We have to figure out a way to find that balance, right?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we don't make action which doesn't end it up in the intended result, because the facilities have to be the ones who say, I'm going to take them.
Exactly. I know that Nevada has a statewide consortium that's actually ran through their Board of Registered Nursing. So that's definitely a best practice. It grew so big that Nevada's Board of Nursing actually had to contract it out. But that consortium that Nevada uses is the San Diego Nursing Education Consortium, the one that's been talked about in this meeting of being an exemplar. Texas also utilizes the San Diego Nursing Education Consortium as well. they have utilized it in their state, and Texas manages that as well. So consortiums seem to be it. That's what our board agreed on when we responded to the 2018 CSA audit for our pre-licensure programs that we responded to in 2020 was really the need for a statewide consortium. That's really the only way that we're going to get like true data. And yeah, I'm happy to take that on. We're continuing to move forward. We got regulations now that support us gathering some of this data. We've got the law, the BPC code 2717 that allows us to get the data, and we should be able to start chipping away at this, but we'll agendize it for a future meeting.
Okay. We have one board member that is not able to hear the meeting. Lori, do we have an update?
Nothing yet. We will vote on this agenda item, and we do have enough with a quorum without them, and then we will take, it's been asked to take a 15-minute break.
Okay. So,
what was that you, Jovita?
I think, yeah, we can faintly hear you, Jovita,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
faintly.
I had to change devices because something I thought we were all having issues, but it was me. So now I'm on a different one, but I'm not able to access video on this desktop.
I'm not able to hear Jovita enough for it to be coherent. I apologize.
She said that she just changed devices and she's not able to use the camera on her new device. I think I can hear her very faintly, but well enough at least to make out her vote if we were to take a vote, and then maybe during the break we could see if there's anything that can be done.
Yeah, we can work with the board members. Thank you.
Jovita, does that sound good? Were you able to take in the discussion to be able to vote?
Yes, I was able to get back on. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
okay, we'll take it to a vote. Dolores Trujillo votes yes. Vice President Mary Fagan.
Mary Fagan, yes.
Elizabeth Woods.
Woods, yes.
Jovita Dominguez.
Dominguez, yes.
Thank you. Patricia Nguyen.
Win, yes.
David Lawler.
David Lawler, no.
Vicki Granowitz.
Can I vote no, even though I made the second?
Yeah, the vote's up to you.
Sure.
Okay, I vote no too.
Okay, so we have 3 that voted for the motion, or was it 4?
We have 4 yes and 2, 4 yes, 2 no, and 1 absent.
Okay, so the motion carries.
Can we confirm Jovita's was an aye, was a yes? We couldn't hear her, but I just want to make sure. Dolores, she was a yes. Thank you.
She was a yes. Jovita?
Yes, it was a yes.
Thanks,
Okay.
Jovita.
All right, so why don't we take a 15-minute break? Coming back at
10:40.
10:40 is good.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, see you back here at 10:40. Back. Dolores Trujillo is present. Vice President Mary Fagan.
I'm here.
Elizabeth Woods.
Present.
Jovita Dominguez.
Jovita present, no camera.
But you're present.
Yes.
Patricia Nguyen.
Win here.
David Lawler.
David Lawler here.
Good. Vicki Granowitz.
Vicki Granowitz here.
Great. We have a quorum. So let's move on. Is Loretta here? Lori?
I'm here.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
So moving on to item 8.0 continued. 8.4 is the NCLEX unit update. And I guess we're combining that with 8.5?
I believe we can. They're both information only. And 8.4 and 8.5 are just items that are included in the materials for board members to read and review, and let us know if there's any questions that they may have. We did a robust discussion earlier on that discussed the NCLEX yesterday, and then part of the EO report covered just some licensing updates, but these are just much more in depth, just to kind of give the board members just the ongoing update. There's nothing truly new, just continuing to work out all the kinks, let you guys know what's going on, and report some numbers. So if you guys have any questions on 8.4 or 8.5, we're here to answer any of them. There is no motion that needs to be done. If you guys don't have questions, we can go out to public comments.
Any questions or comments from the board? No? Okay. BRN moderator, can you please open us up for public comment?
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
And this is public comment for items 8.4 and 8.5.
Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comments. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. All right. That wraps up all of 8.0. Moving on to 9.0, report of the Enforcement Intervention Committee. Is it Patricia, are you speaking, or is there someone else speaking?
Yes, there is someone else speaking, and I'm very sorry. It's usually Shannon, but she's not here today, and she deputized somebody whose name I've forgotten. I'm very sorry about that.
Is it Tim?
I didn't think it was Tim.
No, it's Jaspreet.
Thank you. Thank you, and I'm sorry for the confusion.
No problem.
She's been elevated. And so just for kind of a review, if you move to the next slide, the motion can be, because this was presented in the Enforcement Intervention Committee. So you could make a motion that says, motion to accept the recommendations from the Intervention Committee, go out to public comment and come back. We are here for questions. There does not need to be a presentation, as there is no new items that came out of Enforcement Intervention Committee.
Thanks very much. I'm just pulling that up to make sure I get the language correct.
Yeah, and just for clarification, 9.3 was information only. Sorry, let me just make sure I have those numbers correct.
Yeah, 9.3.
Thank you.
2?
Yeah, 9.1, sorry, is information only. So there was no motion. And 9.2, the motion was to accept the appointments and reappointments of intervention. So that is where it is. When you restate that motion, you can include that it is accepting the Enforcement Intervention Committee's recommendations. And one was for 9.2 was they recommended approval.
Great. So I'd like to go ahead and make that motion that we accept the recommendation from the Enforcement and Intervention Committee.
Yes.
I second it.
So I don't know if there's any discussion of any of this. I mean, it was a unanimous item on the agenda. Do any board members have any questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, I think we need to go out to public comment. Dolores, I think as chair, maybe I should be turning this back over to you.
It
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And then Mark, the public comment is for 9.1 and 9.2.
Thank you. We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Nguyen, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, we'll take the motion to a vote. Dolores Trujillo votes yes. Vice President Mary Fagan.
Mary Fagan, yes.
Elizabeth Woods.
Woods, yes.
Jovita Dominguez.
Jovita Dominguez, yes.
Patricia Nguyen.
Nguyen, yes.
David Lawler.
David Lawler, yes.
And Vicki Granowitz.
Vicki Granowitz, yes.
Thank you. And also congratulations for reappointments and new appointments to this committee. Happy to have you. All right, moving on to 10.0. This is the report of the Legislative Committee. Is Marissa elevated? Marissa Clark?
She is elevated.
Hi, good morning, Marissa.
I don't. There it is. Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Can hear you.
Yes.
Great. Hello, everyone. I know there's been a lot over the past few days, so I promise this will be short, sweet, and painless, I hope. So basically, now that the legislative session has officially ended, I just wanted to circle back and provide an update on all the remaining bills that we had been tracking and kind of what came from them. So we could switch to the next slide. So here on this slide, you'll see a list of direct impact bills. So of all the bills the BRN was tracking over this past year, 17 of them ultimately made it to the governor's desk. And of those 17, 15 were signed into law and will become effective January 1, and 2 of those bills were vetoed. Now this shows 8 of the bills out of that 15 that were signed that were categorized as having a direct impact on the BRN, meaning its day-to-day operations, its licensees, its nature of work. And those bills really touched on a wide variety of topics, such as increased access to abortion services, expedited licensure eligibility, and of course, the main focus of our last 6 months, the Sunset Bill, which Lori went into detail on yesterday, so I won't go back into that. And the good news is, of all the direct impact bills that you see on this slide that were signed into law, the board actually took a support position on all of them. So they're all ones that we hoped would get signed and ultimately did. Go to the next slide, please. Now, the 7 remaining bills that were signed into law were categorized as indirect impact, meaning that although they may not have a direct impact to the BRN and its daily operations, they potentially had an impact to the field of nursing as a whole. And so those bills also touched on a wide variety of topics, ranging from clinical laboratory standards, hospital employee meal and rest period rights, and blood bank staffing rules. And for the indirect impact bills, the positions were a little bit more varied. The board took a support position on 3 of them, and those were AB 1810 by Assemblymember Levine, AB 1914 by Assemblymember Davies, and SB 1334 by Senator Bradford.
The board actually took an opposed position on 2 of them, and that was AB 1120 by Assemblymember Irwin and SB 1375 by Senator Glazer. And lastly, the board took a watch position, meaning it was neither a support nor an opposed, but just keeping an eye on it on the 2 remaining bills, which were AB 2107 by Assemblymember Flora and SB 731 by Senator Durazzo. Go to the next slide, please. I think it's missing one. That's okay. So lastly, the 2 bills that the BRN track that did make it all the way to the governor's desk, but were ultimately vetoed, were AB 858 by Assemblymember Joan Sawyer. That bill would have allowed healthcare workers to exert their professional judgment and override hospital technology with approval from a primary physician if it's in the best interest of a patient. And the governor's veto message cited a request from the bill's author and sponsor to veto the bill. The second bill that was vetoed was Assembly Bill 1711 by Assemblymember Sayardo. And this bill would have required public agencies like state agencies to post a notice on its website in the case of a security breach. The governor's veto message cited concerns with having state agencies actually highlight vulnerable IT systems to the broader public shortly after a breach occurred. So the veto message for both of those is included in your meeting materials as well if you wanted to read a little bit more from the governor's message on those. So that's just a status update on all the bills that ultimately made it to the governor's desk. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those that you may have concerns, questions, inquiries on.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? No? Seeing as there's no questions or comments from the board, BRN moderator, can we open it up? Wait a minute. Before you open it up, do we need to make a motion to accept the report? Or is information only correct?
Information only.
Okay, just double checking. BRN moderator, can we open it up for public comment, please?
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and will move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Board President Trujillo, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. And thank you. Thank you, Marissa.
Sure.
For your
and
report.
If it's okay, I was just going to provide one more just super quick update. It's in your meeting materials, but as we get ready for next year's session, which is rapidly approaching, the legislature reconvenes on Wednesday, January 4th. On page 10 of the legislative materials, you'll see a draft bill analysis template. I kind of scoured a variety of boards to see, what everyone was using and put together a draft template in hopes that we can provide some more kind of context and information on each of these bills now that kind of sunset's behind us and we have the time and energy to really dive into them. I wanted to include it in this packet so that as you're kind of looking at it and thinking things over, if there's any sections that you would like to see added or any information that you think, that maybe not so helpful, to please let me know. This will definitely be an evolving template, but I want to provide as much helpful information as possible so you feel you can make a really informed decision on bills as they start coming back next session. So I just wanted to bring some attention to that, and feel free to shoot me an email or call me if you have any thoughts or concerns on it. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. Good idea. Thank you. Okay. We're moving on to item 11.0. I think this concludes the rest of our in-public meeting, correct? The rest of it is in closed session. And after closed session, we will come back to adjourn the meeting.
Yes, so there will be no further public participation. We will stop the WebEx. It will no longer we will continue the WebEx. We will stop the webcast.
Yes.
And the board members will return just to adjourn.
All right. I'll see you in
Thank you, everybody.
session. I believe the link was sent this morning.
It was to the
Correct.
DCA.